is Saturday, the 20th of February at 7:30 in the evening, and I've decided I want to record these videos on the Saturday, and my Sunday is free. I usually do them on Sundays. I'm not going to do that so much anymore. And before we continue, I'd really like to ask you, I wonder if you can help me and help me raise my subscriber base to 1,000. I wonder if you could click the like and subscribe button. I know that everybody asks people to do it, but I'm going to ask you to do that for me, please. Next up, I'm looking at the major commodities. I'm starting off with gold on the daily and the weekly. Gold has broken through 1800. It's starting to breach the lows, the previous lows on the weekly time frame. You can see there are some buyers at these previous lows. You can see a nice old bullish candle there. If this week it does happen to get over 1800, it might attempt to bounce back up. So in other words, we're now in range-like behavior. The monthly is still in an uptrend. We haven't really, arguably this behavior is not normal. So gold, I think I can update my kind of position on gold and say it's not as bullish. That longer term plan now is kind of still is on ice, is on pause, where my expectation is that it's nice and bullish. It's decided to consolidate at this point in time and not continue that move up. So what that means is that that longer term expectation of it going to 2.3 with ease is now on ice. I'm pausing that and basically just going to assess it as it goes. So just noticing the bullish candle now, if it struggles to get back over 1800, bounces lower, and then of course the possibility that it's going to head down towards 1750 or down towards 1700 is a very real possibility this week. We would then have a weekly downtrend and a daily downtrend, and I would be doing that. I think it would be incredibly reckless for me to buy gold at this point unless I was an investor and I wanted to buy it at a discount. But as a trader, the market is more bearish on the shorter and medium-term timeframes, and therefore the odds are a bit crazy. And if it is going to bounce back up, then it's still range-bound. So we're not really going to get out of this range, I don't feel, until we break out above 1950. And so really for now, it's taking it 1 week at a time to assess what's going on there. Silver is still trickling to the upside, still appears to be holding above 26. It's a little bit more bullish than bearish, but if you look literally the last week, it did very, very little. Open and closed at the same point, and so not giving much away, here. But I still like the idea of seeing this break a little bit higher. I think a break above 28, the previous high, which is at 27.95. So break above 28, we'd see it take another run at 30. But make no mistake, this price action is not incredibly strong. It hasn't gone anywhere in 2 weeks, so therefore I wouldn't just kind of put my hopes in it. Then having a look at copper, which has been obviously outperforming the rest of them, kicking ass and taking names. This is now well overextended. It's broken through key resistance levels. Next level is up quite a bit of room, but it is also definitely overextended on that weekly time frame. So I'd like to see some pullbacks on the daily, looking for buying opportunities at this point in time, and assess. Then looking at platinum. Platinum is set up bullishly on the daily, looking pretty good, is however overextended on the weekly, and definitely sitting at 1.275 is sitting at a key level. So could it turn around here and do a bit of a correction? Yes, it could, back down to 1.2 or perhaps 1.1. It could do that. The daily is signaling that it would really like to attempt to continue higher. Palladium still stuck, battling its way through this resistance area, this band that is between 2.4 and 2.5. Still needs to get through that. So at this point, I'm just going to leave that be. Not expecting much from it. There's no great opportunities there, and therefore I don't want to harp on about it. Just going to note that the weekly candle for West Texas is a bit of an bearish indecision candle while it's overextended. So let's just go in and have a look at that in a little bit more detail. A little bit bearish candle, and therefore indicating that potentially if we break the low of this weekly candle this coming week, prices can head back down towards 54, and therefore there is that possibility for a little bit more weakness on this. However, I would say on the daily it is in the right place to continue and resume and go higher, but that weekly is indicating that it's not completely ridiculous, that it might want to take a bit of a breather. Then moving on to Brent crude. Similar type of issue, that still very much more of a indecision candle, and therefore might break the low of that and head a little bit low. It's not as bearish, it's not as overextended, but that may well be on the cards. I think that if West Texas is going to do it, if US oil is going to do it, then the UK might do it as well. Coming back down to 60, finding some support there, potentially offering a buying opportunity, good. If it does push through that, 53 is pretty much next on my list of key levels. Light crude, almost certainly encountering some resistance there up against 60, and again also having produced a bit of a bearish rejection candle that looking like a nice, just a relatively nice clean signal, but I want to break the low of that to just get that confirmation of a swing high and have it come back down towards, say, 55 to find some support. So that meaning that it's possible that oil could do a weekly correction at this point in time and therefore could head a little bit lower. It has been a star performer, so it is more bullish than bearish, but that is certainly a possibility. Now moving on to Bitcoin. So I want to talk about this just a little bit more. Clearly, there's no doubt we're in a bubble. If you look at this historically, this is the previous kind of bubble, and by comparison, if we look at it on a monthly basis, and I go full screen to kind of demonstrate the craziness that comes with this, we just are, technically just really are moving quite aggressively, and we've gone twice as high, if not 3 times as high as we did previously, and therefore it is a possibility that we could just say, listen, we're in a bubble, and therefore this isn't about rational behavior. This is just much more about demand and that market kind of going nuts. So at this point, we're heading on towards 60,000. And predicting it becomes a little bit messy because it's not behaving in a more typical fashion. It certainly is finding itself thriving at the moment, and therefore it's more likely to just break the rules rather than kind of start to behave. I would say it's starting to head into overextension on the weekly compared to previous cycles going back to January, where there was a bit of a correction. It's heading back into around about that high. It might even go up to 70 before it then does that. That would put it sort of nicely in line with that before having a bit of a correction back down towards, say, 40,000 potentially. On a monthly basis, it's very much overextended, as I said. On a daily basis, it looks fine. There's no problems. This looks nice and healthy. Normal pullbacks up towards 60,000 and a pullback and a continuation. The daily looks fine, absolutely healthy, capable of continuing indefinitely. The weekly now starting to get a little bit far away from the moving averages, and of course the monthly not even remotely in the same universe as where it is. So, and the question always, it's interesting because the psyche is always, when the markets do this at the peak of a bubble, everybody is always going, but it's not stopping. It's a train. It's just never going to come back down. And of course, then it does, of course, come back down. So we know that bubbles always burst. They have never not done that. They've always done it. And so when is it a question of it doing that? Well, that we're going to have to see. Could it be at 100,000? Could it be, what's going to happen? But what's going to be interesting will be the sob stories that kind of potentially come with that. So just high risk in terms of that. If I was looking to do this for myself in terms of that ownership, I'd be thinking longer term as well, alternatively just taking cash and retiring forever. But it's going to be interesting to see how it ultimately reacts when it does come back down into those kind of true values. But daily looking good, weekly starting to head into that. I think it's possible that it could still push through to 70 within that weekly range, and then start to really push the upper limits of the channel, and then potentially start to come back down for a correction. Certainly on a weekly basis now starting to approach that area. Okay, so Ethereum is not really the same creature at all. This is coming up to 2,000. It's a little bit overextended on the weekly, but not a lot. It's not that bad, and the daily again looking pretty cool. So no real major concerns at this time for Ethereum. Of course, if Bitcoin does it, Ethereum will too. But I don't think the correction for Ethereum is necessarily going to be as bad potentially down. So we might find that we get, on the monthly basis, we maybe get a 50%, 50 fib retracement. That's not ridiculous. It's happened before. We could have that happen again. But on a weekly, we're looking at probably a 382. It's nice, and or even a 23. It's looking relatively nice there. So that's it from me. Again, trading to the upside on cryptos, but with a lot of caution, keeping in mind that a bigger correction is going to come due at some point, but at this point it's more bubble behavior, and therefore it's not really behaving reasonably. It's just going to do its own thing. Crude oils potentially looking a little bit weaker than they normally do, might be starting the beginning of a weekly correction, but that longer term trend so far, no signs of that necessarily having to end anytime soon. And then of course looking at metals, copper still being the most appealing of the bunch, silver a little bit more bullish than gold. And leaving you with that. And again, another request, please, to subscribe to my channel and like this video, and I'll be forever grateful. Thank you very much.